When it comes to the idea of the Surface Pro and how powerful it is versus how powerful it should be, well, let's just say opinions are divided. Luckily, we have the Acer Switch 7 Black Edition, which is, well, pretty powerful, but there's some compromises as well. Today I'll share with you what those are. Stay tuned. Okay, before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the history of this device because it's really interesting. It was announced in September 2017, but didn't come to the market till nearly a year later. And now we're a couple months into that and we're going to finally cover it. It's a weird device too because it does some really intriguing things. For instance, it's got a 13.5-inch display. It also has a GeForce MX 150 graphics processor and does all this with a Core i7 completely fanless. And all that sounds really amazing, sort of that dream Surface Pro that many of you have wanted. But before I give you my final verdict, well, let's do a complete product tour. And I'll show you what I mean. All right, looking at the display, well, there's a lot going on here. Let's call attention to those giant bezels. Now, I'm not really one to really rip on devices for bezels, but these are pretty thick. You do get some cool stuff though, but let's talk about the display resolution. We're talking 2256 by 1504. Which is a little bit strange. It is 13.5 inch. You do get a web camera on top and to the right for whatever reason that is. It's an okay camera, definitely not the best I've used, but it gets the job done. Now, one of the things they did do with these thick bezels is, well, there's a fingerprint reader built into that bezel, which I have to admit, it's a clever use of a bezel, although it's an okay optical fingerprint reader that is kind of hit and miss, so definitely not one of my favorites. Would have preferred Windows Hello facial recognition, but I'll take it. Now, being a full Windows 10 tablet PC, you do get a pen, and look at that, it's built right into the chassis. I'm actually kind of a big fan of this. This is a Wacom EMR pen. Now, obviously, if you're going to be drawing a lot, you'll want to pick up a third-party pen, maybe one of the dual protocol ones, but this is a pretty solid one, and it's not too bad at all. One final note about this display. So it gets around 300 nits of brightness, probably a little bit less. It's not the brightest display I've used. It's merely okay. It looks nice. The color contrast and everything is pretty solid, but you know, this is a pretty mediocre display. Now, when it comes to the keyboard, Acer did a pretty solid job here. So this does click up and has magnetic, just like a Surface Pro. And the keys are a little bit smaller than I'm used to, but it's actually a very good typing experience. You do get a little bit of a rattling to it, so that's just Acer, but I actually enjoyed typing on it, so no complaints. It is backlit as well. Let's take a look at this trackpad with the fancy little black edition scribbled across there. Now, this trackpad's a little bit smaller than I would prefer. I feel like they could have made this a little bit larger. Having said that, it is precision, it is glass, it's smooth, and it even has a really nice click to it. So I actually really like this trackpad, and in using it, I had no issues. All right, looking here at the right-hand side, you can see a USB Type-C that is Thunderbolt 3, I'm happy to report. So if you ever wanted a Surface Pro but Thunderbolt 3, well, this is an option for you. You also do get USB Type-A, which is pretty solid. You get a barrel charger, really weird. Acer likes to do that. You don't need to do it though. If you have a powerful enough Type-C charger, and this isn't a huge processor, you should be able to use that and charge a device that way. Now at the bottom here, you do get a headphone jack, and look at that, a micro SD card slot on the side. Turn to the left-hand side, you can find the pen. You just pull it out with your fingernail, not too bad. You also get a power button and volume rocker. These are pretty flush with the device, so you'll have a little trouble feeling them, but it's all right. Let's talk a little bit about this kickstand. U-style design, HP has used this in the past. It's actually pretty cool. Nice in metal too, so it's pretty solid, but there's no way to pick it out there with your fingernail as far as I know. Instead, there are two buttons on the bottom of this, and what happens is you press down and the kickstand kicks out. And it works pretty well if you're on a table. And that's the thing about this device. You'll want to use this on a table. You could use it in your lap. You'll need to physically press those buttons though, and it's a little bit large, but you get this kickstand and it's kind of cool. You can do things like press down on it and it'll automatically adjust. And if you bring it back up, it too will adjust there. The downside of this design is if you're going to use the keyboard and you just want a better angle, well, you get a variable angle. It works perfectly. It's not so hot though if you want to draw on it because as you can see, it just has no resistance. All right, let's get to power, performance, and all of that good stuff. So this is running a Core i7 8550U. That's a Kaby Lake R processor, not Whiskey Lake, but still, it's pretty modern and it gets very good performance out of it. And what makes it really interesting, like I said earlier, this is a fanless system, so they have a dual loop cooling system that's built in here. Having said that, if you do push this for a long time, yes, it will throttle. It just has to, right? There is no way for that heat. It's got to go somewhere. It's always supplemented by the fact that it has a GeForce MX 150. And this is the lower wattage voltage, 1 to 10 watt, I believe it is. So not quite as powerful as the 25 watt, but this is really nitpicking at this point. Now the MX150 is roughly equivalent to what the Iris Pro graphics were, but they don't have that for this generation of processor, so that's why everybody uses the MX150. And it's nice to have, but it's not gonna really do anything for gaming too much. If you're doing some sort of platformers and 2D stuff, it's all right. If you're doing first-person shooters and AAA, well, you don't want to use it on this device. You do get Thunderbolt 3 though, so you can use an external GPU if you wanted. Now RAM is 16 gigabytes at DDR3, which is pretty standard, and for storage you can get up to 500 gigabytes, and this is where it gets a little weird. So they're using a SATA drive on here, so it's not PCIe NVMe, which is the really fast stuff. So you talk about 500 megabytes for read and write, which is pretty slow. Now you don't really feel it when you're using it, and it's still much faster than like a hard disk drive, but it's weird to see in a premium device like this someone using SATA. I've seen this from some manufacturers recently as a way to save money. All right, let's bring it all in. Let's talk about what I do like about this device. It's very powerful. If you wanted a Surface Pro, but you wanted something with a little extra power, well, this is it. The fact it's a fanless system is also kind of cool, pun intended there. The MX150 though won't do anything really huge, but if you're doing some graphics processing, you're going to do some video editing, well, it gives you a nice little boost. But there are a lot of downsides to this device as well. For instance, it weighs 3.5 pounds or 1.6 kilograms. And you do feel it. Every time I give this device to someone, they feel like it's super heavy for what it is. It's also a little bit large, and because of that, using it in your lap, well, it's not gonna be really easy. If you had an issue with the Surface Pro in your lap, well, this is definitely not any better. This is better suited for someone who works at a desk all day. And in that sense, it's sort of a neat idea to have a larger Surface Pro that's meant for more of a professional. Having said that, if you're a regular consumer or a student, well, there's gonna be a lot of compromises. And I haven't even talked about audio yet. So they do have front-facing speakers in those giant bezels there, which is pretty nice. And it has Dolby Audio Premium and some other gimmicks involved, but these aren't very good speakers at all, folks. These are what I would call good speakers 3 or 4 years ago, but the standards now have gone up so high, these are just not very impressive, and I actually found them a bit of annoying. Now, one thing I want to point out, and I usually don't call companies out for this, it's bloatware, and Acer has a lot on this device. Now, it can be all uninstalled, of course, but everything from eBay to Booking.com to Amazon to all these other sort of apps I've never used before are all pre-installed on this device, making it the exact opposite of a signature edition. Now, when it comes to battery life, it's not terrible. It's actually, I would say, on par with Surface Pro. Now, that's going to depend if you're going to use that MX150, which will drain the battery more, and how much screen brightness you're using. But yeah, you could probably push 7 hours out of this, which when you consider it's a quad-core Core i7 processor, it's not so shabby. Okay, let's talk about pricing. So this comes around $1,700, which is definitely not cheap, but you are getting 500 gigs of storage, 16 gigs of RAM, a pen built in, and you're going to get that keyboard. Compared to Surface Pro 6 with similar specifications, well, the Surface Pro 6 is also $1,700, but you're not getting the pen and you're not getting the keyboard, which will add another $250 to $280 depending on what you get. And that brings us to my final conclusion here. Is that $250 actually worth it? I'm going to say no. While I appreciate what Acer is trying to do here by delivering us a much more powerful Surface Pro, they succeeded there. There's just a lot of compromises as well. Having a SATA drive and something with this much performance is a little weird. Those bezels are also not really pretty. The speakers are pretty terrible. The cameras are okay. The fundamentals are all right. The screen I can live with. The keyboard is good. The trackpad is solid too. And the overall design does feel very quality. I don't want to say anything about this feels cheap. Quite the opposite. It feels very solid. I just feel like for the pricing, the size, and everything about it, you start to lose what was really cool about the Surface Pro 6, which is its size, its thinness, its battery life, and how all the fundamentals just worked well together. So I have to give this device a pass, but I like to encourage Acer to keep it up. I think they're onto something here. And I wouldn't mind seeing more manufacturers try this to bring us something different from the Surface Pro 6 and either make it cheaper or more expensive and give us something a little bit different. All right, so there's a quick look at the Acer Swift 7 Black Edition. Now, we'll have more information about this device in the description below, so you can go click those links. Leave me a comment, though, and tell me what you think and how you think Acer can improve it. Otherwise, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. I guess... Okay, pause for a sec. I just need a sec. All right, so there's a quick look at the Acer Swift Black 7.
Swift 7 Black Edition.
You're right, Acer Swift 7 Black Edition.